So we're going to talk about meditation.
I know I'm excited about this topic. I mean, not that I'm not excited about the other topics, but this is more lighthearted.
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna get into the benefits of meditation, some things about how to meditate, and what the significance in one's life is to meditate. And you and I both share the sentiment that it's very important to meditate. So let's start with the definition. So I found a very simple definition, and we can build on this. But meditation is a practice where a person uses techniques to focus attention, become aware, and calm the minds by letting go of thoughts. How do you like that definition?
I love it because at the end, it's letting go of thoughts. Because I feel that a lot of people don't meditate because they have this preconceived notion that they can't meditate. And you're kind of sitting and going, and that it doesn't have to be that way at
Right.
all. It's just different for everybody. And that's what makes me really excited because I encourage everyone to do it in whatever techniques works for them because the benefits are just so amazing. However, I think the meditation can also open up a whole new side of you that you may not be prepared for.
You're you're really excited and giddy about meditation. It's really cool. I love seeing that. So I think it'd be good to start by anyone who listens to this later or who's listening to this now, just a real quick example of meditation. It's very simple. I will do it with you. It's very simple. Take two conscious, well, before we do it, what I'll ask people to do who are hearing this is to check in with themselves and see what your thoughts seem to be doing, where you feel tension in the body, what your temperament is, and then just take two conscious deep breaths. So, and we take another, I sped it up because we're going to be talking, but now if you check in, you notice that you probably feel a little more aware, a little more relaxed, and a little more centered just from doing that. And the reason is because the only way our thoughts kind of take us along like a wild river is when we are, well, number one, not aware that we're thinking, and we're thinking without knowing we're thinking, but when we're not present, when we're not in the present moment. So just by anchoring yourself in the breath, you're in the present moment. So there's a lot to get into about this. So I think there's one quote that I would love, and it's an old proverb kind of, and I think a lot of people have been credited for coming up with this, but nobody really knows where it comes from. But the mind, this is it. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a horrible master. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a horrible master. So what does that mean to you, Nada?
So I think, and I may be totally wrong, Jordan Peterson said that you are the master of the mind, but we let the mind be our masters, which is in line with what you're saying. So we need to learn how to master ourselves, master the mind to keep it calm. Um, so I'm in full agreement. We become slaves to our thoughts. We create scenarios that don't exist because you're thinking future state, right? And that'll create like anxiety. You have arguments by yourself with, you create the characters and you create all these scenarios, all these arguments, these assumptions and all these things because we feel that's really like out of control. We are out of control of ourselves with the
Yeah.
mind. And meditation is to learn how to gain that control and no longer be that slave.
Yeah. So as Eckhart Tolle said in The Power of Now, which I think is a beautiful quote, is we usually don't use our minds are using us. So what that means is we're thinking without knowing that we're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Our mind is, we're completely identified with every thought that comes up. So why should we try to disidentify with thoughts and be present and not allow our thoughts to be, for us to not be the master of our thoughts? Well, I would just invite people to look and check for themselves and see what the nature of their thoughts are. And one thing that I've noticed about my own mind is most of my thoughts, if they're not neutral, they're negative, or they're ruminating over something that should not have happened in the past. They're stressing about something, feeling anxious about something in the future, because by definition, future means anxiety. And by definition, past is what causes us to grieve and be depressed. The secret, and this is a big statement, but if there had to be a secret to life, and somebody said, nobody cares what I think, I'm just Kent. But if somebody said, put a gun to my head and said, you have to tell me the secret to life, I would say it's being in the present moment. And why? Because a happy mind is a mind that is present. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. So when our mind is wandering and our mind is just going and we're believing every thought, then we're believing negative thoughts that are putting us in conflict with life. And the reason we do that is because we believe in this concept, and I can go into this more later, but we believe in this concept of me, mine, and it's just an idea. And we're always strengthening it by being in conflict with something. So that is what I would say is the reason that our mind is always trying to fight something. And the main way that it does that is being in past and future. And the way out of that is to be present. And another way to disidentify with our thoughts is just to notice and be aware that we are not our thoughts.
And I want to take it back a step because wandering mind can be pretty broad. Um, because with a wandering mind, if you're fantasizing, visioning your future and the future state in a healthy future state of how you feel you need to be where you're supposed to be, things like that, that's fine. That's still not being present, by definition, but you're putting yourself in a state of positivity when you're like, for people that do, affirmations and do vision boards, and you do that, all these visualization techniques or what have you, wondering future state of who you rather be, and you see yourself in a happy state, right, in a calm state, and you feel those emotions, is actually, it is a state of flow at that point. So would it be fair to say that the wandering mind is detrimental when you're not in a state of neutrality or happiness, or it causes some sort of trigger? It doesn't have to be extreme, it doesn't have to be like a trigger. I'm just saying like a distraction per se that may go into a limiting belief.
Yeah, so by definition, well, think about the word wander. Wander sort of means without purpose, to move around without purpose. So what I'm saying is in alignment with what you're saying, because you're talking about purposeful thinking, but most of our thinking is without purpose. It's wandering, meaning our mind is taking us along for the ride and it's going on autopilot. You know why this is, because we've talked about this. It's because of the default mode network. And the default mode network is because of it's made up of different parts of the brain. And without going into a lot of detail, it's what causes our mind to wander. 50% of the time, our mind is going off and thinking about things that don't have to do with a purpose. It's just wandering. So it has nothing to do with the present moment or nothing to do with purposeful thinking. So because I'm talking about meditative living, and meditation is about being in the present moment, it's hard for me to not bring up Eckhart Tolle, because he's sort of modernized a lot of the
Mhm.
old Buddhist teachings and mindfulness teachings. And he talks about there's psychological time and clock time. Clock time is I have to be here at a certain time. I have to make plans to go on this trip in a few days, or, whatever the case may be. It's about having a calendar, it's about having a purpose, about knowing where you're going in the future. Psychological time is worry, it's fear, it's it's being stressed about things and basically trying to control things that we can't control.
Yeah, that's a good definition. I like that distinction. Um, and like you said, it's the programming. We're always stuck, and you're unaware when you get caught in that cycle of all these thoughts, because you're doing it in the car, you're doing it when you're walking, you're doing it when you're on your way to like pick something up. It's just constantly going, and it feels like almost impossible to shut it down, to shut
Yeah.
it off. And that's been a real uh, frustration point, to the point where now I'm just like, well, maybe it's not meant to be shut off. Maybe I just need to roll with it, and not, what I tell people when it comes to meditation, you just don't engage with it, right? But what does not engaging mean? It means that you don't answer your own questions in your head unless you really have to. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the only way I can think about it. Because I really do feel like it's almost not controllable, unless you're a monk and you're in Tibet and you're up in the mountains and that's your job. But that's not, our lives right now, right? We work, we have responsibilities, and time is everything, right? We don't have enough time for this or that. So how do you work with it? It's the next step.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point that you bring up. Can we shut our minds off? And a good exercise to do, and it's hard for me to not be really practical when it comes to meditation and practicing being in the moment, which, as we said, meditation is the practice a person uses and techniques to bring your attention and become aware so that you can, and the definition says to let go of thoughts, but I don't agree with that definition. And it was the closest I could come to one that I agreed with, because an exercise that we can do is ask yourself, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. And if you ask yourself that and you get quiet, you don't know what your next thought's going to be. The thoughts arise without our say so. They just come. It could be a thought about Paris. It could be, why does this guy who's talking wear these Harry Potter glasses? It could be, why doesn't this guy get a haircut? Or, wow, Nada has a really nice smile and she smiles a lot, or whatever. But the whatever the thought is, we didn't author that thought. The thoughts come on our own. So what is important to do is to realize that we can't stop our thoughts, but from a dualistic perspective, and there are really two different ways that we can approach this. One is more esoteric and is more straight to the point, which I won't get to. But from a dualistic standpoint, we are the sky, and the thoughts are the clouds that come by. We don't author the clouds, but we can disidentify. So the way we're living, and I like to do this when I'm explaining it to somebody, we this is us, and these are our thoughts, and we're completely identified with them. We believe every thought that goes through our mind, and every thought that goes through our mind, it's has a sense of me attached to it. These are my thoughts, and this is real. But what meditation is doing is disidentifying, realizing that you are the sky. The sky is who you are, and the clouds come and go. And the beautiful thing about it is awareness, which is what the sky is. The one who knows you're thinking, the one who breathes in and out and then feels that sense of openness, because just in being present enough to breathe 2 conscious breaths, we're able to be conscious enough to disidentify from our thoughts. And we feel that sense of relaxation. That sense of relaxation that we feel when we're present is our natural state prior to being identified with thoughts. So, what we're looking for in life is the sense of being in the moment. Is love?
Yeah.
Well, love, when we love, we're not needing anything, and the mind is constantly needing something in the next moment. So when we are present, we're not needing anything. When we love someone, we feel this sense of everything is okay now. So that's why we like, but love, we can't depend on a human being or a drug or a Netflix TV show to be able to escape us from our mind enough to give us satisfaction. So we're brought back to, because what the mind is really, the theme song of the mind, as Eckhart Tolle brought up in his book, is I can't get no satisfaction, because the mind is always trying to get something in the future, and it's gets its identification from the past. But when we are in the present moment, we are not so identified with these false ideas about ourselves, and we get to have freedom from the bondage of self, and we get to be grounded in our true nature. And our true nature that we feel is peaceful, it's joyful, and it already is in the moment. It's just identification with thoughts that get us lost, and we forget who we are. So what meditation is turning off that default mode network, and that's really what we do. The default mode network is the wandering mind. 50% of our lives, most people spend like that. And when we meditate, we turn that off for the most part. And the whole idea is so we can take it into our lives, not to compartmentalize it and say, this is my meditation when I'm going to be peaceful and I'm going to be a maniac the rest of my waking days. It's to bring that into your life more and more. So you're practicing turning off the default mode network so you can turn it off more and more during the day, so you can think purposefully when you need to think. And then when you don't need to think as much, you can enjoy the present moment. And out of that comes less stress, less depression, less conflict with other people and conflict with ourselves.
And I'm going to bring that back because one of the points that you just stressed was natural states. We are not meant, through all the teachings and everything that I've been going through, you know, philosophies and stuff, we are not meant to be sick. We are not meant to be stressed. We are not meant to have these anxieties or anything of the sort. Um, and we don't know what our true self, our true nature is, because it feels like from the moment from birth, we never had the opportunity to understand and learn what basically not having those emotions or whatever thoughts. You come in thinking, the moment you come out, and then you get programmed by whatever. So we never knew what our true state is meant to be. And this is written in all sorts of, books, scripture, whatever you want to call it, it's in there. The true state is to be in the present and to be calm, really is. And it's a shame that we're learning this so late in life. I kind of see it that way, because we could have done so much more as a collective if we had this information. I mean, we did, but nobody paid attention to, back then in the days it wasn't so readily available, all these resources. But even the 5 minutes of disengaging, right, from those clouds is going to add on to your life. It's kind of like, the way I see it is like having a mortgage payment. And even if you add $10 to your payment, you go down from being amortized for like all these years, and instead of 30 years, you'll cut it down to 27 years or whatever, by just adding that little more. And that's really how I see the benefits of meditation, because we don't know who we truly are, how we're really supposed to be. Instead, we just know the byproduct of it, which is the suffering, the self-imposed suffering, maybe the self-imposed disease that you may have, from being stressed, the somatic effects, psychosomatic effects that you get from all of this. And that's why the benefits of meditation are so, I wish more people would talk about meditation in a more like natural conversation,
Yeah, yeah.
because it is that important in your health. If you're looking at being gluten free or low carb or whatever, meditation should be part of that, list to be in there, because it's that important.
Yeah, I love what Dan Harris. He's was an ex news anchor who talks about meditation. He's an advocate for meditation now, and he's sort of an ambassador for it. And he said that he has a prediction, and he kind of laughed and said, "I don't know if you should listen to my predictions because I invested in Palm Pilot in the early 2000s, and that didn't work out too well," which I thought was pretty funny. But he said, he talked about like in 1900, if you said, "I'm going to go run," the question would be, who's chasing you? But now, running and cardiovascular exercise, people, if somebody's health isn't going well, it's like, are you exercising, getting cardiovascular exercise? Well, the new kind of evolution that we're going to go through, and that is, hopefully his prediction was, hopefully what will become the norm, is meditation. Meditation does not need to be something that's attached to any kind of ancient tradition. I mean, nothing against the guy behind you, on your the
Ha, who, you
Buddha.
mean Buddha?
Just him.
Just him.
um, yeah, I think those teachings are actually really practical, but they don't have to be steeped in mysticism. And you agree with me, it's about, just like you said, okay, so let's talk about some benefits of meditation. And I actually, well, let's just talk about lower blood pressure. You will have less likely to have a lot of different diseases, even diseases like psoriasis. You're less likely to have more well-being. You're going to have much better well-being. What other health benefits can you think of that there are from being able to meditate and be in the present moment?
Well, being part of integration circles, and things of that nature, skin disorders are usually the first ones that get cleared up, from what I've noticed. And this could be like hives from stress, or like rashes that come up from so much stress, especially if it comes from work or whatever. Those are typically the first things I see people say, "Oh my gosh, it's like healing," and you see it. So skin probably is the first one. The second one is the heart rate, being able to calm down. Everybody is high stressed. There's a lot going on. And it really takes just a few minutes to regulate yourself. You don't need to go out and run. You don't need to do jump rope. A good walk is good. That's another meditative technique that we can get into.
Yes.
But for the most part, it's lowering the heart rate. Because again, that kind of adds on to what I was saying about the amortization in the end. You do 5 minutes of this, lowers your heart rate, and you're going to add on to your life.
Yeah. So yeah, it's more self awareness, a boosted immune system, uh, enhanced well-being, better sleep. But the main thing is more focus. And the more focused we are, the more we can be present. The more we can be present, the
Yeah.
less our mind is taking us over into places we don't want to. Because, just a reminder, don't take any psychologist or psychiatrist or spiritual teacher or anybody's word for it. Look at your own mind and see what your mind does. And what you find is that most of your thoughts, if they're not neutral, they're unpleasant. So why not when and if a lot of our life, if around 40 to 50% of our life is a wandering mind, why not take control of that more? So I think that's really important to talk about, that there are benefits, but um, the amygdala. Do you know what the
Yeah.
amygdala does in the brain? Yeah. So it's the fight, flight, or freeze response. And so if the fight, flight, or freeze response is uh, is turned on, a lot of the time that is because we're not present. Why? Because we're going to be worried if we're thinking about the future. We're going to be regretting things if we're thinking about the past, or we're longing or mourning. There's a lot of unpleasant things that are firing. Well, the amygdala really starts to shut down more when we become present. So that's one thing that happens physiologically when we meditate or we're present.
I want to also add, because this was really huge for me, brain fog.
Hmm.
Brain fog, when you meditate, you get afterwards, you'll have the clarity, or the clarity comes to you shortly thereafter. That was one big thing that I noticed within myself and also with the people that, I go through these integration circles, is that we tend to have a lot of brain fog, and it's a joke now for the Gen Xers that you don't know, like, when you wake up, I mean, or you get up and you're going to the room and then you get to the room like, what was I supposed to do here? And then you're just staring, you're in the middle of the room because you can't remember.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. We
Yeah.
don't remember what we got up for to do, and the meditation actually, it's kind of like it's an organization system that just puts everything back into order in your head. You don't have to do anything about it. You just have to chill, and it puts it back into perspective, and then you're like, oh, I went to go get myself some water, that's why I'm here. But it
Yes.
really helps with the brain fog that so many of us are experiencing right now.
Yeah. 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 So this is there is something neurologically that happens, and I always have to say I'm not a neurologist, but it's important to know the practical implications of this. So the upper left prefrontal cortex is stimulated, and what that is attributed to is higher functioning in our brain. As um, other animals, if they have a prefrontal cortex, it's very minimal, but we're really the only living beings on this planet that have a really developed prefrontal cortex, and that is where we have all our reasoning and our higher functioning. If that brain fog you're talking about, that happens because we're not that part of our brain is not fired up, and when our amygdala is fired up, we're in fight, flight, freeze, and that's a hell of a way to go through life. And when our old brain, our lizard brain, or our caveman brain is activated, we're not using our higher functioning. So our higher functioning is when we have more of a choice to live the way we want to live. So that's really important to see. So yeah, the way they talk about it, and I this couldn't be more practical, but I am going to talk about the guy behind you. And Buddha, they asked him, and this is so practical. There's nothing mystical about that. They said, "Are you a god?" And he said, "No." Are you a prophet? No. What are you? And he said, "I'm awake." And what is awake? Well, brain fog is more like being in a daydream. It's being asleep. We're not aware. So this whole thing is awakening. It's being more aware. And what is awareness? It's our natural state when we're present in this moment. And that can be found in the simplicity of what's happening right now. And I think it's really important to mention that there have been studies done where that show. Do you know what I'm about to talk about? So
Yeah, because
there's
I was going to go there too.
well, maybe it'll be something different, because what I was going to say was there have been studies done that show that if we are doing something we enjoy, but our default mode network is activated and we're wandering and our mind is wandering and we're not present, then even if it's something we enjoy, say we're, uh, I don't know, playing any kind of game we like to play or doing some sort of hobby, but if our mind is wandering while we're doing it, say we're water skiing, but we're up and we're good enough where we're thinking about other things, we don't enjoy it, but we could be doing something that we don't even enjoy. And I'll use an example like picking up my dog's poop or mowing the lawn or whatever it is. If we are present, then we are happier when we are doing something we don't like than if we were doing something we didn't like and we were not present. So it's not the activity, it's our state of awareness that is important and it's primary and what gives us happiness in life. So you were going to say something else, I bet. What were you going to
Yeah,
say?
that was not the what I was going to talk about, but I want to get into that one too.
Yeah.
So one of the things, and again, I'm going to say it with you, I'm not a neurologist, I'm not a doctor, nothing like that, but I do read a lot of books with a lot of research, a lot of data, is so they always say we only use like 10% of our brain, right? And that's always being, it's always controversial. Is it really 10%? I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't care. What I do know is that we don't use our brain to the fullest capacity. We have blockers, and then you have your Asperger's, people who use a different side of the brain, which they make them, super intelligent, and then you have other people that aren't on that type of the spectrum. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to enable the parts of the brain that we have no clue how it works or that it exists, because we don't give ourselves that opportunity to do so, because like you said, we're on the fight, freeze, or flight mode at all given times. And as I do this different types of meditations or whatever, I have come, for me myself, which I think is probably for you too, you are able to conceptualize and understand theories that maybe a year or two or four ago you would have never been able to put together, because you've made space in your brain and you've had all these neurons and axons, whatever, starting to connect and start making neural pathways, new neural pathways for this. And that, to me, on the science level, is the most fascinating part, that you don't need to take anything. You don't need to take all these, they're saying all these, microdosing will open up new, neural pathways. Yeah, probably. However, you have it within you. You could do it yourself by this meditation practice. And I find that fascinating, that I can do things now that I never thought I would be capable of doing, because I didn't think I can think like that. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't want to complicate this. And so a wise person once said to me that sanity is simplicity. And why did I think that was so profound was because the only place that sanity can be found is in the present moment when we're not taken over by thoughts. And the present moment is always simple. And yes, there are benefits to the brain. We have we're either in alpha or beta, which is alpha is more of the reasoning and thinking, decision making, and when our mind is more wandering, from what I understand, it's the beta. But the gamma rays start to be activated when we're more in a meditative state, and they've seen that from MRIs and things like that from these Olympic meditators. But I don't want to, like make this into something. We don't have to live in a cave. And there's nothing special about living a more awake, aware life that is free from unneeded conflict and suffering. And that is caused by, and not just that, but being the kind of person, and there have been studies to show this, when we have more compassion for other people and we have more self-awareness about ourselves, we're going to be happier. And when we meditate, the gray matter in our brain starts to develop more, and we develop more of that. But how do we do it? take a deep breath, a conscious deep breath, maybe even take two. When you're, and this is meditative living. So we could practice by doing different kinds of meditations, and I can talk a little bit about that, and I'm sure you can too, about different meditations that people can do. But the practice of meditation is disidentifying from thoughts and feeling your true self as awareness, because we're not our thoughts, we're awareness. We're the awareness that's here, that's noticing it, and that awareness is always and already peaceful. And when we talk about this kind of thing, it sounds all woo woo and whoa, that's kind of deep, but it's not. It's just us when we're not identified with thoughts. And the only reason that we think of this as something that is counterculture is because our culture, it really reveres things that aren't important. Ultimately, it's money and just achieving goals, but that those things are certainly very important in life. But what's primary is our state of awareness, and that determines our degree of happiness. Is our I've been trying to avoid saying this, but our state of consciousness, because that sounds too esoteric, but it's just how aware, how present are we, is how happy we are, and how happy we are is how happy we make other people. And that's that has to do with how we're able to, when I'm getting up out of the chair, I know that I'm getting out of this chair. When I am cooking dinner, I'm aware of my senses and I'm here doing it. If I'm doing that, I'm going to enjoy cooking dinner. If I'm thinking about that, I want to be able to relax and sit on the couch and watch my favorite show while I'm cooking dinner, I'm not going to be happy. And I'm going to be more likely to not do a good job. I'll be more likely to cut myself. And that could be a metaphor for anything in life. We're less effective when we're not present, and we're going to be more likely to cause suffering on ourselves and other people when we're not present. I don't mean to be on a soapbox. I don't have this mastered, but I'm just trying to make it into something that's really simple and achievable.
So let's take that as a segue, because the one thing we haven't discussed, which I kind of touched base on earlier when we first started, was the uglies of meditation. And what I mean by uglies is when you are committed to doing meditation, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is that you call, um, whatever time you allot yourself to it, there will be a point. There will definitely, guaranteed, there will be a point where you're going to come to terms with yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And that part is scary, because this is the part that probably not many people say or talk about. You read it in the books, but to like actually say it, is you confront yourself for who you think others are, but it's actually you, how you are. So, maybe criticizing, judgmental, whatever, all your uglies are going to come out. You're going to see yourself for who you really are. And that is all part of the process of becoming your true, authentic self and being more self-aware. And that way you can be more aware with others and provide that compassion that you were talking about earlier. And that may be a scary thing. And I'm not going to, sugarcoat, meditation, because I love meditation. And you have to be willing to see that and kind of go with the flow. Like Bruce Lee says, be like water, right? Just go with the flow and process it and integrate with it, because it's really who you are. So that will happen with meditation, with folks that are not used to it or just barely starting in it. With a lot of practice in it, you will come to that point. And once you come to that point, that's when wonderful things happen as a result, and you'll see the wonderful things.
Well, can I play the devil's advocate on
Yeah,
that? I'm
go
not
for it.
trying to, yeah, anybody who talks about being more mindful as it's all sunshine and rainbows is trying to sell you something, and that that's, bliss, never ending bliss. There's no such thing, but there is a way to reduce suffering in our lives. And the way I'll push back on that is, I mean, you can enjoy going to the gym. I mean, a lot of people do. You like to work out. You enjoy going to the gym sometimes, but sometimes going to the gym sucks. And when we were in a workout class where we got pushed really hard, and we didn't we didn't feel good while we were doing it, but it was worth it to do. And that's the same thing with meditating. I mean, there is a reason why we try to avoid ourselves. Most of what we do, and I don't want to get too philosophical about this, but most of what we do in life is to try to run from ourselves. That's why we do all the stuff that we do. That's why we jump off of a building with a something elastic around our ankles, and and we jump off of a bridge, and we get on roller coasters, and some people are compulsive about sex and drugs and watching Netflix or doing nothing, whatever it is. Obviously we all, including me, look at our phones all the time to avoid ourselves. But that avoiding of ourselves, if it worked, it would be great. But we're doing is distracting ourselves from, what are we distracting ourselves from? The incessant mind chatter. That's
Mhm.
it. That's it. It's incessant mind chatter. So the beautiful thing about it is what's under the incessant mind chatter is that peace that we're looking for in. The reason we bungee jump is because our mind stops when we do. Because we're so scared, we think we're going to die. We're getting closer and closer to the ground. Our mind isn't going to be thinking about the past or the future. It's thinking about surviving. And we get we get a brief reprieve from this bondage of thinking incessantly. But why not just get uncomfortable enough to sit and meditate and just be with our thoughts? By this thought's arising, I bring my attention back to my breath. This thought arises, oh, wait a minute, I just got lost in thought. I'm explaining a very simple way to start meditating. Oh, I was thinking without knowing that I was thinking. And then I just bring my attention back to my breath. So, it really is that simple.
It can be. It takes a little practice.
Yeah. Yeah,
It can be.
it's simple, but it's not easy to
Hmm.
do.
Like everything
So
else. Life is meant to be simple, but we overcomplicate it. And this is
yeah,
one way to simplify it. It really is. That's
yeah,
why I love meditation for everything it's done for me. Um, so, but let's go into techniques now. You
yeah,
just started with the techniques on that. I'll start. One of the things I do talk about a lot is different types. You were talking about it, just doing something. Like if you're gardening, it's what I think of meditation is just a state of flow where you just don't think about anything, you're just doing it. So in gardening, you're pruning, you're not really thinking about it, you're just doing it and you're enjoying that. That's a meditative state, right there. Going
yes,
on a walk where you're not even thinking about it, you're just looking around, maybe you're walking the dog. That's meditative right there. That is meditation because you're in a state of flow. You're not thinking about anything. So
yeah,
it's not just about sitting down with your eyes closed or whatever. You can also do nighttime meditations. There's plenty of YouTube nighttime meditations. Jason Stevenson is a big one where you just play it at night and you just hear it in your mind. It relaxes your brain and it puts you quickly into a theta and then into a delta state.
yeah,
And then you have all these things going on. So if you start doing those things, you're already doing it, which is really
yeah,
cool. Not many people like realize that you're already doing it.
yeah, yeah. Meditation does not need to be just sitting on a cushion and following your breath or whatever you're doing, but it is really important, I think, to mention. It's not that our mind, as we practice meditation, gets better at being aware without being identified with thoughts. It's that it gets better at redirecting attention to
Mm-hmm.
the present moment.
Yes, yes,
That's the
yes, yes,
muscle.
yes. That is correct.
So, right, right. I love that
Yeah.
I mean, you know this so well too, because it's really, if our mind starts wandering, anyone who starts to meditate, and let's talk about, before we wrap up, I definitely want to talk about different ways to meditate. But if I used to teach meditation classes, and every single person who came into the class said, I'm horrible at this. I mean, like, there were a couple hundred people I talked to, and every single person said, I'm horrible. And it's because the natural state is to be in that default mode network where we're lost in wandering thoughts. So here's the cool thing is when we direct our attention back to our breath, back to the present moment, back to our mantra, back to whatever is bringing us to the present again, that's the success. It's so not getting caught in scolding ourselves for getting lost, but just, oh, I just brought it back. And every time we bring it back, it's almost like a muscle that we strengthen, you
That
know?
and that goes straight with what we were talking about. Like you can never shut the brain off, but the redirection is the key. Um,
Yes.
kind of relate when I do mass meditations in a big, you know, audience setting, whether it's 10 people, 20, 30, 50, whatever. And there's always going to be people that they're saying that they can't get into meditative state. Just having the group, and then you're kind of sitting there like, well, everybody else is breathing. I should breathe too. You know, they kind of just do it. And they fall into that meditation and they realize, oh my gosh, I didn't know I can do it. But they did it because they felt the peer pressure of others around them doing it. And
Yes.
it is that simple, and it's all about the redirection. I love that you brought that up because I almost completely forgot about it. It's the redirection that's probably more important than the actual meditation because that's what's going to get you to the ultimate state that you're looking for.
You are very passionate about meditation. I think you should start teaching meditation at some point. I really do. But
I do at
so,
the events. I do at the events.
oh,
I
well,
do.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I can definitely tell. So, a big question is why, what are we looking for when we meditate? And there are two different breathing techniques that you can do. One is to be more alert, and the other is to be calmer. And this is something that's, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if you are breathing in slowly and then you breathe out quickly, more quickly, then that helps someone be more alert. If you breathe in quickly and breathe out more slowly with your breathing technique, then it helps you to be more calm. That's something that can be really helpful for people depending on what they're looking for in their meditation. When I started meditating, it wasn't about calming down. It was about not being as spacey and being
Mhm.
more focused and not having that brain fog. So that's a good way. If I knew that back then, that would have been a good way for me to practice. You
You're
know?
right. There's a lot of breath work that you can take it for a different effect, and that could be something else and completely different
Yeah.
because you have like the dragon breath typically for people that don't have never experienced it or are just starting to get into it, I do the
Yes.
4-4 method, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out.
Yeah.
If you're more advanced, you have the visualizations of starting from the root chakra all the way up above the crown chakra, then bring it back down. So there's many different techniques depending on what your goal is. But for the most part, for just calm and
Hmm.
peace, it would be the 4 in and 4 out. And then I didn't learn till later on in life that I was breathing wrong
Yeah.
because I was training for long runs, endurance runs, and so my breathing was very shallow. Like you think I
Yeah.
was not even breathing at all, and then you're like, no, when you breathe in, you push the stomach out. I had the hardest time coordinating that process. So at first, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't because the goal is to just calm yourself down and then redirect the
Yeah.
thoughts. If you get more advanced, then you can look into all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's just me because I enjoy it, and I was getting so much of a kick of different types of techniques. But it's just bringing it in, and just for those few moments, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever that you commit to, it's just finding the peace at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's another thing that's really interesting that it took me a long time to come across is we're all hooked up differently, right? So some of us have more of an introspective bias, which means that we're more inward looking. You know, there's certain personalities, and that's not you. I don't think you're more of an outward looking person. But if you're more of an looking person like I am, then a good meditation can be to look extroceptively, to look outward. So if a lot of people, and this is one way for you to know. So it's like, what does that mean that I'm more inward looking and more outward looking? If I am inward looking, a lot of the times I can be more very empathetic, but sometimes more sensitive than I would like to be. I can get in my head. uh, Things affect me really, really deeply to the point where I would get more emotional than I would want. Well, that's because we're so identified with everything that's happening in here that that a good meditation can be to look outward. So, and you don't hear about this kind of meditation as much. It's usually a one size fits all to look inward, but to look at a point outside yourself. It could be a spot on the wall, it could be a mountain in the distance, it could be watching the clouds go by. But the whole point, to know that we're focusing, that's, we're meditating if we're focusing, and if we're bringing our attention back to directing our attention back to the present moment. So if we're more sensitive, then being more extroceptive, so we do the opposite of what is comfortable for us. So if we're somebody who gets more distracted, more ADD, more um, spacey about certain things, which I at certain times in my life have gotten lost in. When, you know, if we're like squirrel, you know, and a lot of us can be that way, then being in the body and being more introspective, doing the opposite of what's comfortable to us, is a great meditation. And that is more of the following the breath that we talk about. And that is more being in the body, feeling the energy in the body. So those are, I think that's important to distinguish about two different kinds of meditations, and depending on what someone's kind of general natural disposition is.
And don't get stuck on it because you evolve.
Mm,
So what worked for you then won't work for you. I've pretty much
right.
almost tried everything. I've done the whole pointing out, which I really enjoy actually, taking a geometric shape, what's it called? Mandala? It's
Yeah.
Indian.
This
Yeah, mandala, right?
mandala. Yeah.
Mandala. So you take that, you look at it, and you feel like your eyes are crossing, right? But you're actually physically getting into that meditative state, and that's kind of like your the symptom or whatever, because I can't think of the better word, to know that you're in that meditative state, that you've already gone from your beta to your alpha down to your theta. So it's really cool that you really can use anything that you define as a state of flow in meditation. You don't have to stick to the breathing. You don't have to stick to anything. It's what works for you.
Yes.
And there is no one answer for all. It's not
No.
prescribed. These are just different techniques that people talk about. And most teachers will teach what works for them. But at the end of the day, you're always evolving,
Yeah.
and you just need to figure out what's your jam.
That's well said, Nada. That's well said. I think, you know, there's just so much out there, but finding, and what's beautiful now is there's so many apps and so many different ways that we can shop around for meditation. And it's just like, you know, people go on dating apps. Why not go on, you know, different ways to shop for the kind of meditation that works for you? And you'll find that, especially if you're starting, what resonates with you and what helps us to focus, you know, well. Um, so there, I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk about um, non-duality and the direct path to meditation. And this sounds trippy to people, but I'm gonna go there and point out that our suffering comes from believing feeling that we're separate from other people. And the more we are in conflict with ourselves and other people, the more separation we feel. And that is the crux, the basis of our suffering. So when we're meditating or when we're just being present, noticing that there's no solid self, and this has been proven through science, that there's no solid self. There's just one thought at a time that comes and goes, and that actually our primary state is one of awareness. And I'm trying to avoid the word consciousness, but consciousness is knowing what it's like to be you, being aware. So being able to be more in the place of knowing that who I am is basically consciousness, that is the shortcut to not suffering, because consciousness is what we feel when we're not identified with thoughts. So I think it's really helpful to realize that this this idea of ourselves that we're trying to defend when we get into an argument with someone, or that we have an idea, with the elections coming up, about how the world should be, and then there's people over here who have a different idea. We're strengthening something that doesn't exist, which is just this self that really is an illusion, because we have thoughts that come and go, and that's our experience, one thought at a time. So knowing that who we primarily are is not this idea of ourselves that we're always trying to defend, but ultimately who we are is awareness. And that's our primary state, is that we are consciousness, that that's the ultimate goal of meditation. And a lot of people who hear this are going to be like, what in the hell is he talking about?
I was just going to say that that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, but
Consciousness is
I just
huge.
think that's worth just
Mm-hmm.
um, putting a placeholder on that for that seed to sprout later, and just bring that up. That there's this ultimate state, that we're place that we want to get to, where we know who we are.
I agree. As a matter of fact, I think you just got me motivated to start putting meditations, creating meditations and putting them on my podcast for different types of, people that are at different states of meditation, from beginner to light worker to what have you. Now I'm motivated to do that. So, because it's so important. I feel it's so important because consciousness is a big word that you're going to be hearing more and more
Yes.
and more. And I'm so glad that it's coming. It's becoming so, they're speaking about it more and more, but there's not much understanding of, because it's kind of like consciousness is invisible, it's based on faith-ish thing. And so it's very hard for the person who's very analytical to understand what that consciousness means. It's not a straight definition,
Well, it's
really.
based on experience, though, because
Gnostic,
the experience of being
yeah.
aware is the only thing that we know for sure. It's the
Yes.
only thing that we know for sure, is that we are aware, and that is the key to our happiness. Being aware, awareness is present, and being present, don't take my word or anybody's word for it. I have found in my own experience, and a lot of other people have for a lot of years, that when we are present, that's when we're happy. It's not when we get these things that come and go. It is the state that we're in, which, how aware are we of what's happening? So it's not, if we're doing a task that we don't enjoy, it is what we bring to that task. And if we have a task, and I'm repeating myself from earlier, if we have a task that we don't really that we really enjoy, but if we're not present, we're not going to enjoy it. It's who we are and how we bring ourselves, and that's what meditation is for. So
And
uh
that's Gnostic teachings, and gnosis is the state of
y-
experiencing, which is exactly what you're talking about.
yes,
Yep. So
yes.
if you want to look up Gnostic teachings, that's it. It's just learning through your experiences. So like Kent said, don't take it from us. Experience it yourself. It's better when you experience it yourself.
Yeah, that's all that matters. These are just um it's like the old saying, the old proverb, the finger points at the moon. You don't want to look at the finger. You don't want to notice the finger. You want to look at where it's pointing. So any kind of, they're all just directions, anything that we're talking about. There's nothing to be revered about any idea that anyone says, obviously nothing that we say, but it's like, what works for you, find out and tell us about it, you know?
Yeah, I want to hear. I love this stuff. Tell them we are no experts. We just know from our own experience, and we're just sharing with everybody. So, yeah, that's what we're here to help everybody out as much as we can.
Yeah. Thank you, my
All right,
friend.
Kent. Thank you. And if you need life coaching services, Kent's your dude. He offers life purpose stuff and stuff like this. This is what he does.
KentScheibel.com, KentScheibel.com, which is not an easy name. And what about you, Nada? You've really shown all the stuff that you do through the intelligence of what you've been bringing up. So tell us about you.
I am more of a metaphysical, esoteric person, and I work on this, but with a different twist. Is the level of consciousness, and we take it to the next level. And next level just means what are the metaphysical effects of meditation. So I pretty much talk about those. I do channelings, and I do just bringing. I interview people like yourself that have different services that do not fit the norm. They're not doctors or anything. It's just alternative ways for healing, alternative ways to help you on your journey, and alternative ways to so you can figure out who your true authentic self is. And I love doing that when people get the aha moments. And I just put people together. You want to know about this? Talk to this dude. I have a podcast on him. So, and that is on at Guided Counsel, GuidedCounsel. And that's the tagline, or what is it? What's it called? Hashtag or tagline or whatever
I,
for all social
I'm
media.
Yeah, yeah. And I really just want to express my appreciation for the fact that the way you do your work, there's just not ego in it. You're doing it to bring anyone forth and bring yourself forth in any way that's helpful. So thanks for the work you do, Nada.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you for your work. Everyone needs help.
Yep, we do. We do.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you, and thank everyone who's listening and will be listening.
Yes, thank you so much. Tell us what you got and any ideas that you may have for future podcasts. I can't wait
Yes.
for in 2 weeks. It will be our 10th live Instagram, which is going to be totally dope. It's a topic that I hold really dear to my heart. And I've realized that more and more people are going through this, or maybe they were already going through this and I didn't notice, but it's going to be big. And it's about toxicity. It could be toxicity in your family, in your workplace, and whatever. And it's there's going to be more of that as we go through this new age. So very important. So 2 weeks from now, I don't know what that date is. I don't math well, but whatever 2 weeks from today is, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Alrighty. Thank you.
Thanks.
Talk to you later.
Thanks, Nada.
Bye.